So the course is Morphology and Syntax Basics, Semester 4, BS English. As I told you, so under morphology there are many things to be covered. So it's better to start. This is what we are going to cover today. We are going to try to discuss right about the following aspects of morphology. So first thing we will cover is to talk about the types of words. We will try to see the types of words, what are they, right? And then we will try to introduce what is morpheme. You remember, linguistics overall is the science of language. We need to analyze the structure of language. In morphology, the structure of morpheme is very important. So, in morphology, the minimal structure we deal for analysis is called morpheme. So, try to see what's morpheme. We need to look deeply into the definition of morphology. And the definition is provided to understand what's morphology, and we have to complete all the parts in outline. So we need to grasp what we mean to morpheme, right? We will start the definition of morpheme, then about the throughout, what mainly types are, and then the other component of the lecture. Well, the types of morpheme, basically there are two types of morphemes, the bound morphemes and the free morphemes. And what are the bound morphemes and what are the free morphemes? And we are going to talk about what are the morphological analysis or morphemic analysis, because what's the purpose of morphology is to do this analysis of words and morphemes in a language given. So we will try to understand what are the main steps. As in linguistics, overall we follow some steps to analyze the structure and science of language. In order to do linguistic analysis of language, so this is it's a fundamental unit to start the linguistic analysis. So there are a number of things that we have to and the steps of follow. So we will try to look into the process of morphological analysis through the example of present day English. We will try to practical do the whole procedure of morphemic analysis, because you can do this analysis with a real-time example in steps, and we can apply any language, for example Arabic, Urdu, Punjabi, by following these steps of the analysis or morphemic analysis. For example, the English, present day English, we can apply to any of the language of your own choice. So we have to determine, and I have to identify the types of morphs and morphemes. There are morphs and there are morphemes like phonemes and fonts. The terms are similar, and this will help us understand better the definition of what is the morpheme. And I am going to talk about the types of morphs, and we will talk about the first step of morphemic analysis, which is phonemic representation. Then we have to do The second step, the isolation of affixes. We will say what we mean by affixes, and we will talk about the details of affixes. So there are rules we are going to talk about and the alternative rules, and of course on the basis of present English again finally we will sum up the whole discussion. So these are the headlines for today's lecture and we will discuss in detail. Types of words or words types. There is one thing we have to know about words and morphology. There are two types of words. There are variable words and the variable words, which mean these words change. They change and then the next invariable word. They of course do not change. There is one way of categorizing words in morphology. For example, you have number of words in here. For example, women, but, myself, sweet, walk, about, of, now. Do you think woman is a variable or invariable? Because you have singular and you have also plural of it. Invariable, myself. It's never you have myselves, alright? If you want something else for plural, you have to use ourselves. That's a different word. Then we have walk, variable, about, it, invariable. So these are examples. So these can be classified. So now variable words are women, sweet, walk, and then you have the invariable words fine, and these invariable words usually include the pronouns. Okay, so this category is reflexive pronouns, right? All types of pronouns in English, they have the grammatical functions and you have basically grammatical functions with them. So this is one way looking into words from this perspective. Another way of looking at words is classifying words in closed items. We have closed items and then closed items. What do we mean by this? It means small substitutions sets whose principal function is grammatical. They change slowly over time. It's similar to the invariable words. So I told you that there are different ways of categorizing words in morphology. We have seen the first way, which is variable and invariable, and the second is to have closed set items. It means small substitution sets whose principal function is grammatical and they change through time. For example, he, a, on, be. All they are grammatical words, so we can have prepositions, articles, open set items. Open set items examples are play and replay. These are open, that means you can extend them. They are called infinite. And closed, they have some number and then that's it. This is the first characteristic for closed and open classes. Another characteristic is about the change slowly change over time. If you want to look languages throughout time, these are the categories of closed items and it changes slowly and open very quickly. And open the other way on the other side, open set items, they do change over time quickly, means try to change quickly, and also they are open and to have and to add many words in them. Because of this process we're going to talk about later, called derivation. Because of derivation and compounding you can have or you can create number of words, and we are going already to see these ways of coining new words. So this is another way of classifying words into morphology and each other. First, categorization shows you can basic feature of each category. One is variable and invariable. Here we have another category that is closed sets, and you can have open set. Closed sets are finite and they change slowly over time. They have usually the grammatical functions whose principal function is grammatical, while open set items, they are open, that's why they are called open and have meaning, and they have the meaning, they carry meaning, meaning that is semantic, a separate linguistic level, and they change quickly over time. So this is another way. So this is the second way you can say to categorize the words in morphology. Now let's see how can we find a morpheme and how it is defined. Morpheme is defined as minimal bearing meaning element. Let me tell you again, here a meaning in some same references I told you last time, the real time English. So the morpheme, they are minimal bearing meaning element. If you look at phonemic, it's smallest unit of analysis, but it doesn't have the meaning. But morpheme, it does have a meaning. For example, man, it's a morpheme. It's a morpheme and it has a meaning. That's why meaning is to be meant by minimal bearing meaning element. It's an element of a language which is very minimal, but it has a meaning, like man, cup, etc. So this is the definition of a morpheme. So we have to remember in this way. And for other types of words you can have throughout the lecture, you will understand more about a morpheme as well. Another way of classifying or categorizing morphemes in morphology, we can have two types, as well as they are bound morphemes and free morphemes. The free morphemes, they are the morphemes, they can stand alone as words. They are morphemes, they can stand. They can, for example, say man. You can say salt or you can say book. Whatever morpheme words, they can stand alone. So these are called the free morphemes. There is another type of morphemes which is called bound morphemes, and these morphemes only function as parts of words. They are only function as parts of words and they don't stand alone. For example, if you take unhealthy an adjective, in it, un, it can't stand alone, and un doesn't stand alone and functions as part of other words. For example, good. How do we make adverbs? In Lee. Lee, now the L and Y in itself, it's a morpheme and bound morpheme. Why? because it can't stand alone. We can never say Lee and people will not understand what are you talking about. You have to put it at the end of the other word in order to stand. For example, if you say quickly, slowly, you add it usually to adjectives in order to stand. So we are doing this way is correct. But if you say only a Lee, it doesn't work. Another example is the past tense id of the past tense. It doesn't stand alone, it's a bound morpheme. It has to be attached to another word which has a meaning to understand. So there is a word worked that can now stand alone. I can understand you when you put ed in the end of the verb. Now, so it can go together. Now, those are again two types of morphemes. The free morphemes that can stand alone. So, quick, clever, book, market, whatever. You have those bound morphemes and we said they have to be attached and usually to play a grammatical function. And those functions like past tense, third person singular, s with verb and the s of plural. So many others, for example, here we have man. Now this is the example, but if we put Lee at the end of the man, you have to put Lee in order to understand and now meaningful word morpheme or right, unmanly, unmanly. So man is free and Lee and they are bound. Why? Because they have to be attached to a word or a morpheme. Now they too stand as correct and meaningful. So free morphemes and bound morphemes, they both are the types. As for the free, you can understand the meaning as free means freedom. So you say it without any problem. Bound, you have to attach it, has to be attached to something, a verse, in order to have meaning. In order to explain further the types of bound morphemes and free morphemes, so bound morphemes you can have meaning in examples of bound morphemes like derivational morphemes, for example en, the adverb li, etc. And derivational morphemes are morphemes which when co-joined with another morpheme form a new word. If you take bound morphemes, there are types as well of bound morphemes. One of them is called derivational morphemes, and we are going to see in the next slide the second type of derivational morpheme. So there are subcategories you have to categorize of bound morphemes. It has worked subcategory. So first subcategory is what we call derivational morphemes, and these derivation of morphemes are morphemes which are used in order to derive for a new word. For example, man, manly and unmanly, slow, slowly. We see these morphemes in order to derive or create new words. This is one example. So we will see. So for example, often involves, this involves to change in grammatical category. When we do this, we use as derivational morphemes. Usually it changes the grammatical category. For example, we have the word un. We have seen before the man and then we have Lee. The first word man is a noun. When you put Lee, it has an adjective. So often this involves the changing in grammatical category. When we do this, we use it as the derivational morpheme. and usually it changes the grammatical category. You have seen un before man and then we added li. So man was a noun and when you put li it becomes an adjective. So this is a change that is grammatical. So this is one of the role, one of the aspect on the influences of using derivational morphemes. Usually we have this, but sometimes we don't have. But usually we have a change in grammatical category when we have a combinations of a bound free morpheme, derivational morpheme with a free morpheme, like we are going to see here. Look at this one. This is grace. It's a verb. It's a, grace, all right? And it is called as a stem or the root. It's an original word, and from the word we can add derivational morpheme, and which will be the result in creating or deriving new word with a new grammatical category. And we knew grammatical category grace here. Let's see what happens. So we are to add full, graceful. So no more noun. We have an adjective because we have added derivational morpheme full. Discontinued with the same word, disgraceful. While added dis without add, we have graceful, it's an adjective, and when we do disgraceful, it's again an adjective. And I told you before, if you add derivational morpheme, usually it has new grammatical category. Now we come on an adjective, but sometimes there is no change in grammatical category. If we ask in this example here, we can continue again gracefully. So we have now the creation, derivation of a new word. Now we continue the bound morphemes. Another category or type of bound morphemes, in addition to derivational morpheme, we have the inflectional morphemes. And inflectional morphemes, what do we mean by inflectional morphemes? They change the grammatical form of a word but not its word class or central meaning, right? It changes only the grammatical form of the word, but it doesn't change the word class or the meaning. For example, we have here two examples which are fish and loud. Two examples are here, fish and loud, and we are going to with inflectional morphemes and the same thing for loud. So let's see. So here fish, we can add the inflectional morpheme past tense ed, it, a tense, past tense is kind of inflectional morpheme. So it does change the grammatical category. It looks as a verb, but the tense changes. And another one, fish, and then we add the third person singular, fishes. And fishes are like this. So the third person singular, when a present simple tense, we add es. So es again, it's an inflectional morpheme. You see, it's an inflectional morpheme. Some word, but just gives another meaning, right? Some kind of grammatical meaning to the word. So first the word was fish, then we have ed, and it adds the grammatical meaning of past tense, and then we put s and es as the grammatical meaning changes. And that we are taking about he or she. So it's an inflectional morpheme. Another example using loud. This is a stem. or a root, and then we are going to add to it. And then we are other types of inflectional morpheme like adjective, superlatives, comparatives and superlatives. So we have to louder. It's the same word, same adjective and same meaning, while simply some more meaning to it. And then now the another example of inflectional morpheme. So this is what we meant by inflectional morphemes. Inflectional morphemes, we have lots of this case in other languages as well. This is different from derivational morpheme. So that was all about the derivational and inflectional morphemes and the differences, and are all about it. So the morphological analysis, the next concept, we will talk about what we call is to rely on an example. I am going to rely on present day English example for clarity of the topic. Now we are going to explain it, and then when you go to an advanced level, you would know more examples from the point of view. So we start the process. There you can see some types of brackets. So this is helpful as well to see the different types of morpheme, then different categorization of morphemes. So we are going to explain the process through this. We need to recall first what are the morphemes and what are different types of morphemes, and also if we have the morpheme, we are going to have the different variants, those called morphs or allomorphs. And just for this we have to follow the formality, putting brackets. These are also used for phones, for phonemes, and we use slashes sometime as well. So for the morphemes and allomorphs, we use morpheme curved brackets like what we have here. We call a curly bracket. And for allomorphs, we just have to distinguish between these two variants of morphemes. We just want to distinguish that morphs and allomorphs, they are two variants of a single morpheme. So this is with the continuation, and the relevant examples are there which we will describe with more explanations. First thing we have to explain here that what we mean to differentiate between morpheme, morphs and allomorphs. Here we have some examples. 3 examples: walks, misleads and classrooms. Now we have to do this. We have to do the morphological analysis in order to try to determine the morphemes and allomorphs. We have to do it is just like a phonemic representation, phonetic transcription, phonemic representation. For the pronunciation of different sound, we have to determine that on the same grounds. When talk about the general linguistics, on the basis of which anything convey through phonology, morphology is also in fact, and so exactly like this. We have to describe it for the analysis of words. This is how it is phonemically represented. So we have walks, walks, then misleads, and then classrooms. And then you can see their sound boundaries. You can do 3 morphologically in order to introduce the formalities to do in morphological analysis. In this word walk, and then we have a morpheme attached to it, and to differentiate between the morpheme, what we can do, walk, the verb walk, and then we have s, the third person singular for the present simple tense. He walks, she walks. So first of all, I do walk like ducks, and then I saw catching a bird. The verb catching, we are going to see that this is the next step for morphological analysis called isolation of affixes. Misleads, then we have to separate misleads, and separating two morphemes, lead is the stem or the root, and lead verb, and lead, then we attach to it one derivation of morpheme, which is misleads, because when attach the word miss to verb leads, we can create a new word. It's a generation of a new word or a morpheme, and then we will add an s, that is an inflectional morpheme. Here the third person singular again, similar to walks. These separate between those morphemes using attached morphemes. It's called attached morphemes. The last word is the classroom. It is divided into two because we have two words here, that class and room, and class and then room. We have 3 morphemes attached together, and they create a new word in different ways. How we create each word, either we can create a new word by adding a bound morpheme like miss, and for other different examples, these can be ness, ness, ly, ly, un, etc. So this was the whole analysis. Through this isolation of affixation, we can have to separate the inflections and derivations of a word. So for further readings, the references are given. So please, you can consult to have some broader studies. Thank you so much. See you next time.